Have you ever noticed that we are always trying to escape from ourselves? The modern world is not only fast, it is loud, invasive, and saturated. There is no more natural silence. Everything has become a stimulus: endless feeds, background music, fast-paced videos, notifications that never stop. Not because we need it, but because we have become dependent on not thinking. Nietzsche already foresaw this. The louder the world, the emptier the souls. This obsession with constant stimulation is not evolution. It is anesthesia. Our time treats silence as a threat. A space of calm becomes a breach for anguish. That is why rushing has become a kind of organized escape, a theater of emergencies that masks the discomfort of being alone with ourselves. If this topic makes sense to you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next videos. Nietzsche viewed modernity with suspicion. He saw the excess of comfort, entertainment, and information as a kind of collective intoxication. We are no longer seeking truth or spiritual elevation. We are seeking distraction. Distraction has become the new ideal, and this ideal requires us to be busy all the time, not for productivity, but out of fear. Fear of emptiness, fear of hearing your own mind without makeup. When everything around us screams, any silence sounds like an abyss. And that's where the challenge begins. If you can't stand 4 hours of total absence of stimulation, no music, no social media, no video, no conversation, the problem isn't loneliness. It's you. Nietzsche preached radical confrontation with reality, and reality, in its purest form, is the silence between two thoughts. But society has trained you to fill all the voids, to occupy every second with something that distances you from your rawest truth. The question is simple but disturbing. What happens when everything goes silent? What we call comfort may actually be our most sophisticated cage. Nietzsche was suspicious of conveniences. He saw excessive stimulation and pleasure as a disguised threat, a sweet poison that weakens the will. What often seems like freedom is just unconscious programming. We live in a system that teaches us to desire what we don't need, and to reject what truly transforms us. You don't consume stimuli because they are vital. You consume them because they have been shaped to keep you domesticated. Music all the time, content that lasts seconds, fragmented news. It's all part of the same mechanism, keeping you entertained enough to never question. Nietzsche did not preach suffering for suffering's sake, but he understood that inner strength is only born when the individual breaks with the easy flow. And that requires a radical break with the superfluous. Every time you say no to a distraction, you assert power over yourself. Every time you give in, you weaken yourself. The superfluous does not seem dangerous because it does not come as a threat. It comes as a gift. It's the funny video that distracts you, the playlist that fills a silence that should be faced, the endless scrolling that postpones an important decision. All of this seems harmless, and that's why it works so well. The perfect prison is the one you don't want to leave. Nietzsche called this herd morality, a state in which individuals lose their autonomy and start following what is comfortable, even if it keeps them stagnant. The challenge of zero stimulation is a frontal attack on this logic, because by cutting out everything that is accessory, you force yourself to confront what is essential, and the essential is almost always uncomfortable. True freedom is not doing everything you want. It is knowing how to avoid what controls you. Nothing is more radical today than silence. In a world that values those who speak the loudest, respond the fastest, and are always in the spotlight, remaining silent becomes an act of resistance. Nietzsche understood that true power does not lie in showing off, but in restraining oneself. Silence is an inverted scream, a scream that doesn't need to prove anything, because it is enough. Silence is not the absence of voice. It is the presence of control. Most people talk to fill the void of insecurity. They post, share, react, as if each gesture confirms that they are still alive. But this is noise, and noise is just amplified despair. Silence, on the other hand, reveals maturity. It is in silence that you hear yourself without interference. It is in silence that you discover what you really think, what you feel when no one is watching. And more than that, it is in silence that you begin to build the kind of mind that does not need the world to exist with strength. Nietzsche spoke of the free spirit, the individual who frees himself from imposed truths and begins to think with his own hammer. This type of spirit does not seek an audience. It seeks depth, and that depth is not born in noise. The culture of noise has made everything superficial. Even our emotions have become performed in public, diluted in likes and stories. But silence is the place where no lie can survive. If you can remain in absolute silence, without any sensory anchors, without distraction, what remains is brutal, but it is real, and real is exactly what the world is afraid to face. Silence today is raw power, because it shows that you no longer have to prove anything to anyone, not even to yourself. You are present. You can handle being present. And that, in times of constant evasion, is pure strength. It's not about stopping. It's about cutting to the bone. The challenge of 4 hours without any stimuli is not a test of patience. It is a ritual of purification. Nietzsche spoke of the importance of unlearning the superfluous. Today, this idea translates into a radical fast, not from food, but from dopamine. A diet that does not slim the body, but sharpens the mind. For 4 hours, you will disconnect from everything that makes up your daily noise. No music, no videos, no social media, no conversation, no sensory crutches, just you, time, and presence. And make no mistake, this will confront you. It will be uncomfortable, it will seem unproductive, it will even seem distressing, because your nervous system has been conditioned to excess, and any absence will be interpreted as a threat. But that is exactly what we want. We want to go through withdrawal, to face the unease without escaping. Nietzsche saw conscious suffering as a process of refinement. You have to carry chaos within you to give birth to a star. And chaos in this case is the heavy silence that emerges when everything falls silent. This kind of philosophical fast has a reverse effect. It removes all distractions, and what remains is your raw, unfiltered mind. Without the music that regulates your mood, without the video that guides your thoughts, without the networks that validate you. It is the nakedness of consciousness. And that is precisely where power begins. Because when you can endure that empty space, you realize that you no longer need to anesthetize yourself to exist. You can feel boredom without running away. You can be present without justifying yourself. You can exist without performance. The challenge is simple, but brutal. 4 hours. No escape valve. Just the truth of your presence. Silence doesn't hurt. What hurts is what it reveals. When you start the stimulus fast, the first thing that appears is not peace. It's anxiety, an almost physical discomfort, a nameless unease. And this is no accident. It is diagnostic. Nietzsche said that modern man flees from confrontation. He lives surrounded by distractions not because he loves excess, but because he fears emptiness. The problem is not silence. It is what arises within him when there is no escape. In the absence of stimuli, you come into contact with what you have been avoiding for years. Mental confusion, internal tensions, formless fear, repetitive thoughts. Everything that was pushed to the back of your mind now returns with a vengeance. This is the anxiety of emptiness, the temporary collapse of the system of distractions that sustained your identity. Without external noises, you begin to hear internal noises, and they are loud. They demand attention. They want to get you out of there. This is where many give up. The mind starts screaming. It says, "This is useless. Go back to your feed. Just one more video. Why torture yourself?" But none of this is rational. It's withdrawal. It's your brain trying to convince you that your comfort zone is where you belong. Nietzsche believed that only those who go through this pain without shortcuts can truly become stronger, because the anguish of emptiness is the fertile ground for transformation. If you can endure it, you will change. The big mistake is to interpret this discomfort as failure, when, in fact, it is a sign that the process has begun. It's like a fever, uncomfortable but necessary to expel toxins. The anxiety of emptiness is the fever of the soul, a transitory but revealing state. You are not in crisis. You are awakening, and every awakening hurts before it liberates. Without noise, no mask can withstand it. When all stimuli disappear, what remains is you, but not the edited, social, functional you. What emerges in absolute silence is the raw, disorganized, sometimes even grotesque self. Nietzsche called this confronting the inner abyss, that part of the soul that you avoid, but that has never ceased to exist. At this moment of challenge, you realize something brutal. Most of your routine was built to avoid this encounter. Entertainment is not just a pastime, it is a shield. Productivity is not just efficiency, it is escape. Constant socialization is not just connection, it is distraction. All of this forms a castle of stimuli where you hide from yourself. But in silence, that castle crumbles, and what emerges from the ruins is your psychic truth. Unresolved thoughts, confused desires, old fears, traits of emotional dependence, hidden resentments. None of this is pretty, but all of it is real. Nietzsche didn't want you to shy away from this. On the contrary, he saw this confrontation as the only possible path to individual elevation. You must have chaos within you to give birth to a dancing star, but most people prefer to flee from chaos and live as shadows. This is the hardest part of the stimulus fast, because there are no distractions to save you. You are alone with who you really are. No performance, no audience, no filter. And what many call emptiness is actually excess, an excess of everything that has been repressed. Here you discover whether you are strong or just busy, whether you are deep or just reactive, whether you are alive or just anesthetized. The brutal self is not your enemy, it is your raw material. That is where definitive decisions, true cuts, and serious reconstructions come from. But only if you have the courage to look it straight in the eye, without noise, without escape, without distraction. Silence not only reveals, it generates. Nietzsche understood that emptiness is not the end. It is the soil. It is from nothing that something truly new can emerge. But for that, you have to endure the initial sterility. Authentic creation is born from the desert, not from abundance. After the shock of the brutal self, an unexpected window opens. You start to think in a new way. Ideas that were buried by the daily flood of stimuli begin to emerge. Non-linear thoughts, deep connections, silent intuitions. This happens because the brain, free from sensory overload, enters a more primitive and creative mode. Without the avalanche of external data, it turns inward. And in this movement, true thought is born. Nietzsche called this becoming one's own creator, a being that not only reacts to the world, but produces meaning from its own center. And that requires emptiness, because as long as your mind is full of the world, it will never be able to generate a world of its own. Most people confuse consumption with creation. They believe they need to see more, hear more, know more in order to create. But it's the opposite. You need to empty yourself so that something true can be born. During the stimulus fast, this creative process does not come as magical inspiration. It comes as discomfort that turns into power, an internal energy seeking expression, an urgency to give shape to chaos. It is at this point that you cease to be just a receiver and begin to be a transmitter. You stop following the external rhythm and start composing your own beat. And that changes everything. What is born from silence has another power. It is not reproduction, it is creation. It is not copying, it is identity. And that is when you realize the emptiness that once frightened you is now a laboratory. Those who control their own impulses control their own destiny. Nietzsche saw in the figure of the noble spirit a forgotten ideal, the being who acts by choice, not out of need. In a world driven by invisible vices, the simple gesture of abstaining is a silent revolution. Saying no when everything around you says yes is an aristocratic act of consciousness. And here's the key point. Self-control is not repression. It is a lucid choice. It is knowing that you could distract yourself, but choosing to strengthen yourself instead. It is having addiction within reach but not giving in. Because you are enough. Because your strength comes from within. During the fast from stimuli, this strength begins to emerge. At first, as discomfort. Then, as clarity. And finally, as power. The power of not depending. The power not to react. The power to stay. This is the new kind of nobility that Nietzsche suggested, not one based on titles or possessions, but on spiritual self-sufficiency. A kind of invisible aristocracy, those who don't need noise to feel alive. While most people need 1,000 stimuli to distract themselves from themselves, the inner noble is content with what they are. They can remain silent without anguish. They can wait without anxiety. They can live without vices disguised as pleasure. What's more, they don't preach this discipline as morality. They simply live, with lightness and strength, with sobriety and vision, because they no longer need to prove anything to the world, or to themselves. This self-control begins with small breaks. 4 hours without stimulation may seem like nothing, but it is the symbol that matters. It is the gesture of saying, I am in control of myself. I choose not to numb myself, and that today is a rare power. Nietzsche did not want you to be obedient. He wanted you to be strong. And strength deep down is always a decision. Something changes after fasting, and that change cannot be undone. After 4 hours of zero stimulation, you return to the world. But what was once normal now seems excessive. That song is too loud. Your feed seems silly. The video is annoying instead of entertaining. It's as if something has been turned off, and at the same time something has awakened. Nietzsche would say that you have crossed a subtle boundary. You are no longer being led, you are now observing. You have left the trance of repetition and now realize the weight of what you consume. Because the superfluous, after the silence, reveals its true nature. Cheap distraction, useless noise, disguised escape. And even if you try to go back to consuming as before, something inside resists. Your taste changes, your sensitivity recalibrates, and what once doped you now irritates you. This is not just perception, it is transformation. Nietzsche called this effect transvaluation of values, when what was once desired loses its luster, and new criteria emerge from within. What you want begins to change, not out of morality, but out of lucidity. You begin to choose more carefully what enters your mind. The music you listen to, the words you read, the people you talk to, everything goes through a new filter. Does this strengthen me or numb me? This is the turning point. Because fasting from stimuli isn't just for cleansing, it's for redefining. Redefining what is enough, redefining what is pleasure, redefining what is presence. You start seeking more silence, not because you've become a monk, but because silence is now familiar territory, and noise only makes sense when it has a purpose. The superfluous doesn't disappear. It's still there, but now you see it with different eyes, and those eyes are freer. 4 hours, no stimuli, just presence. It seems like a short time, but it's not. This time in silence is not a pause, buying it's a break. A sharp line between what you were and what you now know you can be. Nietzsche did not see transformation as something that screams. He saw it as something that ferments inside, to the point where the old structure can no longer sustain itself. After fasting, you don't come out enlightened, you come out heavier, more aware, sharper, more demanding, with a clear gaze and open ears. And what this causes is irreversible. You have experienced a more authentic state, and now everything that is false, exaggerated, or noisy reveals itself. You started out looking for a break, but what you found was a foundation. This foundation does not come with answers, but with space. Mental space, emotional space, space for creation, for decision, for presence. And it is in this space that you begin to live with more autonomy, not guided by algorithms, not dominated by impulses, but centered on yourself, not as ego, but as essence. Nietzsche believed in the construction of a new type of human, no longer one who follows the herd, but one who creates trails, not one who seeks validation, but one who imposes presence, not one who fills the silence, but one who is strengthened by it. This 4-hour challenge is not a goal, it is a lever, a way to show that yes, you can still have control over yourself in an era that does everything to make you passive. And once you feel that control, even if only for a moment, it haunts you. Because now you know, noise is a choice, excess is a choice, escape is a choice, but so is silence. And in the end, the question remains, do you still need all the things you said you couldn't live without? If this content made sense to you, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And comment below, can you stay silent for a while, without any external stimuli?